Hey Peter,
Good morning.
how are you?
Good. Beautiful weather.
Yeah, here too. It's beginning to be summer, isn't it?
How did
So,
your thing go yesterday? I wasn't able to make it when I read the email. It was already too late.
oh yeah, no, sorry, I should have said that earlier. It was very good, really interesting community. So we'll see if there'll be some overlap, if maybe some of them will come here and so on. So yeah, it was good discussion. And on our page, let me just find it. On our page for today, I posted a song based on yesterday as kind of a way to inspire us a little bit today, which was kind of funny. So yeah, worthwhile. Have you seen a movie called The Holdovers?
Nope, never heard of it.
It's with Paul Giamatti. We saw it last night. It reminds me a little bit of the cold years in Syracuse. That's why I'm thinking of it when I talk to you.
Ah, and that black ice in the parking lot heading to the law school, that got me a few times.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly it. So let's see who will join us today. We'll just see if there's a new build of author actually. One thing he did yesterday, Tim, the our host, he didn't start the recording immediately, which I thought was very clever. But I'm just concerned that if I don't, I will forget to turn it on. So that would be not so brilliant.
Yeah, I'm starting on spring cleaning mode. So many books to dust, it's unreal.
Yeah, yeah, that's a thing. I just submitted my ACM hypertext paper today. See how that goes.
Ah, good luck.
There needs to be more spatial stuff like the library talked about in there. And thank you. Hi, Tom.
Good morning or afternoon, as the case may be.
All of the above. Yeah. No, I was just saying to Peter, I just submitted my hypertext paper. It's
Oh,
very
okay.
kind of craft or design based. So I don't know if it's appropriate, but it really helped me figure out what the heck I'm trying to build anyway. Once you have to write it down, it helps you think. Isn't that part of the point of everything we're doing?
No.
Okay, elaborate.
No, I'm just kidding. Um, no, I mean, absolutely. Uh, I'm all for helping you think. So I'm actually working on a workshop for faculty and teaching them how to help their students think and how to help them think. And that's a tough hill. So I was thinking about writing something for hypertext. I've been so snowed under. What's the deadline on that?
Today.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
It
why.
was
All right.
earlier, but then it became today. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't have time to do it right now. Um,
I
yeah.
don't know. Is
And
it
I wouldn't
just
be
me? Is it just me or are students getting lazier?
no, they've always been lazy. They just have better tools to be lazy with.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that very strongly. Hang on, my camera is on a weird angle. That's not good.
So whenever I have that, whenever somebody brings that up, I point out, well, Trump graduated from Wharton.
Yes. Aye, aye, aye. Yeah.
Well,
He's
he put a lot
probably
of beautiful buildings up in New York City. Tom, how many buildings have you put up?
That's not the point.
Well, he must have learned something at Wharton, or he wouldn't have got those buildings erected, right?
well, he
Mm,
did inherit the money, so that's part of a
that
large
helps.
component of building.
I'm just pointing out his general knowledge of economic principles that he's displayed over the last year and a half. So,
Yeah, I have to tell you guys, not that we should talk too much about politics, but
yeah, no.
the amount of friends and colleagues that I have that are willing to travel to America now is very small.
Hmm.
America's standing in the world is ashes. Ashes produced partly by invading Iran for the reasons of his boss telling him, and then complaining now. I mean, anyway, we're sending our
Yeah.
king over. He should be there next week, sort things out, maybe take back the colonies. I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see.
Not this king. Um, no, and I'm not trying to make a political point necessarily, but I am trying to make the point of there are a lot of people who used to get through college by paying other people to do their work for them.
Talking
Now,
of,
the difference now is that we have tools that have equalized that ability quite a bit. 20 years ago, you had the internet and you could pay a Ukrainian to write a paper for you. Now I can just get AI to do it. I don't have to have the money at all. And that, all of those things, students, we've set up an educational system that's a stupid game that students are going to game. And there's no two ways about that. I mean, if you set up a rabbit warren that doesn't really have any meaning, then guess what? The rabbits are going to try to jump over the walls.
that's a good point, Tom. Hi, Tim. You've caught us on a very skinny day here after a wonderfully rich yesterday. We are now just talking about how it used to be that rich people could pay people to do their work for them, Tom was saying, and now it's the playing field has been leveled. Anybody can ask an AI to do the work for them. So that's
And the
where we
other
kind of
comment I
started
make
today.
Yeah, the other comment I make is that I've taught at Georgetown University, which is a fairly elite university in the United States, and I've taught at Houston City College, which is everybody who doesn't make the big universities, it's the fallback plan in most cases. And I like to tell my students that they're no smarter than, or I mean, they're no dumber than the Georgetown students. The difference is the Georgetown students could afford to buy someone else's time. They got tutoring, they got preparation, all this other stuff that got them into Georgetown, whereas your parents couldn't afford to do that. And now the AI can help you with those things. And I think part of the reason people are so pissed off at AI in the college world is that it's a leveler that I don't think the college administrations really want to acknowledge.
Yeah, that's an important point. So kind of to move things along a little bit. So
Yeah.
I just, as I mentioned to some of you, I just handed in my ACM paper, see how that goes. Tim, it's basically what I presented yesterday.
Got it.
Yeah, but in paper form. And I know we all have used a lot of AI, but just to tell you my recent experience. So I use Claude primarily. And what's been really a bit of an eye-opener, writing a proper paper, again, whether it gets accepted or not is another issue, but it was, I would give it a bit of text, like a section, and say, go through, is there any assertion I'm making here that's rubbish? Because first of all, the thing I've really learned about dealing with AI is you got to tell it stuff. You cannot assume that it knows, right? Which is how
Mhm.
we teach people as teachers to do. You don't just assume. Anyway, and then also, if is there an assertion in here that I really should have a citation for that I don't, and it finds it. So on
Mhm.
that level, it's really, really good. Where it falls down, and this is no revelation to any of you, is the creativity bit. It makes really cool songs. Like Tim had this wonderful session yesterday, which I joined. I turned it into a song using pure AI. It's really quite evocative of what we discussed, isn't it, Tim?
Oh, and what's really interesting is that I forwarded that to this guy Pule, whom I mentioned to you yesterday, but you don't yet know, who is a South African ethno-linguist and rapper and actor and many other things. And he actually follows a rapper who who writes songs very much like that one, ones that have this kind of linguistic philosophical core.
Hmm.
And when I first listened to the one that you posted, I thought, "Whoa, wait a second! Is this guy Poulet's friend?" But you're saying that the whole thing was generated by AI. What did you give it as prompts?
It's a very good question, and I will answer it to the best of my ability. So I have a series of prompts. So what I do is there's two different prompts. So yesterday, guys, Tim's video I uploaded without sharing it with the world on YouTube so that I could do the transcript using sonics.ai. But it's not available if you don't have the link because it's not my IP, it's Tim's. But that's how we got the text. Well, usually what I do with our sessions, I go through every time someone speaks, I tag who was speaking. So it's actually quite useful if we say our names in the beginning, but I forget. So the music generation was followed two prompts. The first prompt was, and no, I'm not going to read the whole thing, it's a bit boring, but the point is, it's a weekly analysis without names. Because as you're an expert note taker and all of that, I give it a bit of context. We're not a company. Do not highlight action items, all of that. Then I give it a bit of context for what the meetings are normally about. Then I give it some formatting rules, analytical rules, and then it presents work. Once that is done, and I do that first, and that's what I would, for our normal meetings, put on the website. But it's a lot less than it used to be because if it's too much, who's going to read it, right? So then, without changing anything, having copied that, I then ask it to make the song. I say, you are a lyricist working in the style of slow-spoken jazz rap. Mature male and female voices alternate verses. So then I go, talk about the style, and then I go into, you'll be given a transcript. Before writing any lyrics, read the transcript carefully and identify the following. The single most pivotal conceptual moment or reframing, the thing that shifted thinking in the room. So it goes through the kind of things it should look for. And then, yeah, so include a recurring hook of 4 lines maximum that captures the central tension.
I was going to ask whether you asked for particular kind of compelling phrases or whatever.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I'll copy it into our chat here, actually, so you can have a skim. That was a bit too long. Hang on, I will do it in sections because it is a different way of dealing with text. I do think it's useful. And so here's the final bit. So I highly recommend experimenting with this.
Frode, are we going to be able to have a copy of the chat from today's session that you are leading?
You can have whatever you like. What is
Because I'd love to share this prompt with my gang.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You can have that, and I can also just email it to you.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah.
1 second here. And the last bit that talks about the music, I give it to the AI that does the lyrics, but I also use that in Suno to create the music part. So that kind of covers the whole workflow. So Tom, kind of back to you on the AI and offloading. I agree with everything. We just saw the movie The Holdovers yesterday. Absolutely ridiculously beautifully made movie. And it's from 1970, very different world. Reflects on some of the themes you're talking about. But what, as teachers, the thing I find fascinating is other than the song lyrics for some reason, the creativity still isn't there, which is of course good. So it will give me references and citations which are completely correct, completely relevant, but they may sidestep the whole point. So the need for crucial reading of your own work augmented with computer stuff is still there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, how we then examine that in students, of course, becomes a very different thing.
Oh, I mean, there are mechanisms for doing that, and I'm actually employing them in my class this semester. And there's two levels to that. One is, I guess you could call it defensive, but I hate to call it defensive because I want my students to use AI, but learn how to use it properly.
Yeah.
And in order to verify that it's them doing the work, you have to build in things that are what we'll refer to as the human premium. And some of that is creativity, understanding storylines, trying to figure out how to put things together. The AI can tell you whether it makes sense, but that doesn't necessarily tell you how to make it make sense.
Hmm.
Um, the uh, the other part of that is that I've switched over entirely to mastery based learning, which basically means you got to get it right, and you get it back until you get it right, and you keep working the problem. And that is a competitive with AI thing, because if you're not master of what you're talking about, the AI can easily replicate you. And if the AI can replicate you in a class, it can also replicate you on a job. And so that is another key component of what I'm trying to show my colleagues, that, this is not about reinventing everything we've ever done with teaching. These are things we've known work for a long time. We've just never had the courage, had the tools to implement them. And I think AI allows us to implement them and push students further up the Bloom's taxonomy, so they can do that higher order work. Because if you teach them how to use the AI to stand on the shoulders of the AI, to think about things a lot harder, and of course the problem is that nobody's ever asked them to do that before. And so I'm very much petting the cat backwards with many of them, and doing it by myself is, I'm kind of out there. My course has had pretty alarming levels of attrition this semester, but I have really good data that shows me exactly what happened, when it happened. These students got to this step. The first two steps are kind of training, so they're a little bit more like traditional. But then we move to the third step, which involves creation. They have to build a website and make it make sense. That's where everybody gets stuck. And that's, again, because school for them has all been about reading and regurgitation. Just repeat back what the professor says. And A, that's easy to cheat with now. And B, it's not really learning. It's repeating. And those students are not going to do well in an AI dominated work world.
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
But
By the way, Tim, you may notice that Peter is not in Europe. You're still in Hawaii, aren't you? The cool thing about having Peter join us
I thought
from
he was heading
Hawaii at
back.
the moment, we get to see the sunrise behind him.
Are you still in Hawaii, Peter? We can't hear you.
I think you got the
Pro-
wrong input.
yeah, you're probably selecting the wrong mic.
Hear me now.
Yes.
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 Oh,
Hello.
Okay. I thought you said last time you were leaving.
I
Not
just
that
had
I'm
a lot of trouble
encouraging you
with
to do
audio
that.
on this thing. Anyways, hello guys.
So,
Always a pleasure.
yeah, I'm glad you're here, Peter. So, Tom, on that topic, the last bit of research I was doing for my paper today was very much about people thinking in space.
Hmm.
And there's some really good research for that, but I hadn't properly looked for it before. So that's an example of my AI having helped me, but ignoring stuff. Because there's specific research on, you do your notes in this way, or you do it in this shape, and you do all of that. So that was nice to come up. And I do hope that we can present student work and other work more spatially, so it's
Hmm.
clearer that they have been untangling their thoughts when it's going to be reviewed by others, as it were.
Yeah. One of the things I say is AI gives you space. It saves you time on certain activities, but then it often takes longer to get the task done because you're working at a higher level. You can do more better things. It improves your quality significantly, uh, if you work with it. Not if you use it to replace you, but if you work with it to, bounce ideas off of, to find better sources, to find that quote in the reading that you're doing, and things like that. That's really important, and that certainly should inform, because we're talking about space too, but space for thinking.
So I'm listening to all of this and thinking about the sort of talk through mini demo that you did of your project yesterday for us. And one of the things, sorry, gentlemen, I should say, brief bit of background. I'm the founder of the Endangered Alphabets Project, and I do a lot of thinking about writing and about thinking about writing and all this kind of stuff. And one of the recurring issues that came up yesterday was the notion of the relationship between the experience and the human body. So the human body and its relationship to the tool, the movement of the human body within the space, the movement of the human body as a means of organizing information in the space, all this kind of stuff. And as you're talking about Georgetown and higher education, it made me think, and I'm not sure if I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm just being like an idiot. But and up until recently, for the previous 5 years, I was living in upstate New York, on the New York side of Lake Champlain, in fact. And it's an area of great beauty and extraordinary economic depression. The two being connected actually because the Adirondack Park was created by the wealthy of the early 20th century as a playground. And so they essentially crippled anybody's ability to make an income in that massive, massive park. But one of the first things that occurred to my ex-girlfriend I was living with there and I bought this house with, and myself, was how there were no tradespeople. If anything went wrong with your house, it was virtually impossible to get a roofer or a plumber or an electrician. And when we did get one, it was invariably somebody who was on the verge of retiring, or he had retired and just did into like jobs for friends kind of thing. And so we asked, why is there such a shortage of the next generation of tradespeople? And what we were told time and time again is kids don't want to learn with their hands. They want to learn on computers, and in particular, they want to learn using AI. And so manual skills is not only a question of not developing fine manual skills, it's also a question of considering fine manual skills as being dirty, being beneath them, and being not the kind of thing that they wanted to commit to in their teenage years or above. So what really interested me about Freud's project is that it seems to offer a kind of a synthesis in the sense that, as you described it, if I understood it correctly, the very act of thinking and writing and talking and formulating thoughts and learning actually is, in your project, a manual act. And it involves a great deal of kind of motor cognitive relationship in order to make it work. Whether that is enough to make manual work more appealing, or whether that is enough to create, for example, simulators that enable kids to learn how to do plumbing work without actually, being in the guts of a house. I don't know. But I'm really interested to hear what you think about this question of whether we are encouraging a kind of disembodiment which will come back and bite us, or whether in fact there are ways in which these can be unified.
That's a really good question. I'm sure there are many perspectives. By the way, Peter Wasilko and me are both Syracuse alumni. So when you talk about upstate New York, that is close to our heart. In the background here, I was looking at the now 3D map of the campus, which of course, nothing like that existed in the 90s when I was there. So that's quite lovely. Most of the buildings haven't changed. I don't know, but what I do know is, if we look at the evolution of our species, there have been some really interesting changes. And one of them was when we left living in a jungle or a forest and going into the savanna, onto the grass, where we had to, stand upright. And maybe it was actually tool use that made us stand upright because we had to carry them. It was an environment change.
Mm-hmm.
And global warming and cooling have gone through cycles. Seems each cycle has killed off a lot of people and also encouraged different kinds of thinking. But until very, very recently, humans, and stop me anyone if you disagree, haven't really been living or thinking in tiny rectangles, right? That's really new. Smartphones particularly, but even the history of books, to have most of your knowledge in a book, it's a bit crazy. It's a bit hidden away. So I do think that your point, by the way, of people not wanting to do manual labor, I think is changing a bit. I think a lot of richer people now, from what I've heard, where people have investment with people like that, they are going back to more manual stuff because the crafts and information stuff is now being automated with AI and all of that. So it's going all over the place. But to find ways where we can put more of ourselves into our work, I definitely think is a good investment. I think that it'll help.
The only trouble is it's just a matter of time before humanoid robotics get to the point where they'll be able to do the plumbing for you. And all they'll have to do is watch one person do the job once, and they'll be able to perfectly replicate that faucet change or pipe repair. So we
But
might have a
that,
window where the manual skills aren't automatable, but it's a closing window. And then they'll
well,
be in the same boot that we are on the white collar side.
maybe, but plumbing tends to be very highly individual. But still, I get your point. It's a scary point.
Again, the auto. So one of the things I will push back on Peter W on a little bit on that is we can develop these technologies to augment our abilities, or we can develop it to replace us. And generally speaking, the augmentation strategy is going to be far superior to a replacement strategy, even though capitalism may lean into the replacement strategy. And as a result, the plumber is going to have some really cool tools that are robotic, et cetera, but he's still going to need to be there to conduct it. It's going to change the plumber's job, but a good plumber knows how to think about plumbing. He doesn't just go in and whack the first pipe he sees and replace it. He understands he figures out the system and then understands where the weak points are, the failure points are, and looks for the leak at the failure point. Because you can't tear up a whole house looking for a leak, right?
Ah, the
So,
sad thing is that would be more profitable.
well, only if you're building houses. Plumbers
So,
don't build houses. So.
so earlier on in the discussion here, we veered into politics, and let's not do that again. But I do think that it becomes really an important question of what do we want to augment people doing? And I truly think that, and it may sound a bit blasé, bland, and obvious, but it is to think and communicate. And that's a very, very human thing. I mean, to create a pretty good college essay to a large degree, so what? Right? It can, if it's done by a human, great. It shows some critical thinking, data gathering, and all of that stuff. But the world we're moving into now, for so many different reasons, is so much more fractured than what's been before. People don't go to churches, not a new thing. And I'm not saying we should go to church, but people would have to meet other people. We're living lonelier lives now, despite these technologies. People don't have the same kind of, well, different opportunities to meet each other, right? So I'm just concerned about the discussion, our thinking becoming, in a way, too abstract or academic. And one of the great things about Tim's group yesterday was it's very rooted in writing, not something vague, but writing. These people generally, am I correct, Peter? Excuse me, Tim. They were writers or teachers. They were doers of some sort, right? So it was very much about how to improve that, if I understand.
In the broadest sense, yes. Um, very few of them are professional writers, but there are calligraphers and typographers and translators and yes, academic faculty of various dimensions. So yeah. Peter, you asked, was there a recording of yesterday's event? There was, and in fact, Frode, if you want to send on the copy that I sent to you onto your group, that'd be fine.
Okay, I'll send the link to the unlisted YouTube then. How's that?
That'd be great. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't realize that you could actually use Zoom to create a linkable video. My friend Cliff, who was the origami guy yesterday, told me afterwards, and I felt even more backward than usual.
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, so I upload the video to YouTube, go to Sonics for the transcription, and then yeah, that's the process. By the way, talking of YouTube, have you guys seen when you uploaded to YouTube, there is a tab called Inspirations now, and it provides AI. I'll actually show you that it's really weird. Hang on a second. Look at this. This is what it's suggesting I make videos about. Crazy?
When I was writing my book by hand, this was last year, I can't tell you, of course, the internet discovered that I was doing that, and I can't tell you the number of apps or platforms that it sent me that would, for example, write my novel for me and would analyze the market to tell me, which sector of the market the novel should be in and, which characters would be most likely to be marketable. It was pretty horrifying.
Wow, that is crazy.
And in fact, actually, if you're interested, what I can also do is I can send you the digital edition of that book so that you can share that with the group as well. It's just as it's a PDF.
That would be great. Thank you. I am hoping to share with you guys something more advanced with the view and the headset, and it was very useful to have to write this paper because I had to contextualize it based on the other stuff. So with the Sloan Foundation, it was all about sitting in a space, the information was around you, or you had it as a cluster here. To now to do it in a virtualized Z bit flat space was something I felt I needed to understand. But I didn't see your hand there, Tom, because you have a yellow background. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
That's my mistake. I have this up for class. So it's the Capitol Dome in Texas. Anyway, the point I wanted to make though is that getting to your question earlier about social isolation and also the offering of unsolicited help in writing your novel. Two things. One of the things I've discovered, the more I use AI in my classroom development and doing logistics, I have that much more time for those personal connections with my students. So AI is actually pushing me further into those human relationships than I had time for before because I spent most of my time doing logistics stuff that just writing assignments and coming up with activities and all this other stuff, and the AI can do that for me and so fast now. And also my classes have gone very much toward active learning instead of me standing up there and just talking at them for an hour and a half. They have to, I can develop activities on the fly. If I'm like, the class is having trouble understanding this, let's do an activity tomorrow, and it'll do it. That used to take a lot of time to do. um and so I honestly think that I think that the current moment, yes, we are very socially isolated, but I think most of us are still living in a pre-AI digital environment. And if your communications are Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Blue Sky, and Facebook, yeah, but that's 2010s. Now we're moving beyond that. We need to move beyond that. And so, that to me, I think that there's a lot of hope there that it will actually pull us out of these things. And as far as the solicitations are concerned, yes, you can automate that stuff now, but I'm sure people have offered to ghostwrite for you too. And that probably costs a lot more money to get somebody to ghostwrite your book for you. But that was certainly an option, right? Especially if you had the resources. And that's why, the rich people of the world are publishing all these books. It's not that they're writing them. Are you kidding? They don't have time for it, you know? And so I would say that yes, AI does do that. It just does it quicker, so it's more visible, but it's not a new thing.
The point of the different media being 2010s or something. I mean, okay, so I agree that this stuff helps with a lot of clerical work, and that's really, really good. But when it comes to connecting humans, Twitter, I think, for a while had an incredible potential because it was the world's first and only everyone to everyone medium. Absolutely incredible. But when you're writing anything of a more serious form, you are still now having to write it in a specific word template or LaTeX using overleaf or something, which I think is mind-bogglingly crazy. Or if you write less serious, you put it on a blog. But how do people find out about it? RSS readers were basically, taken over by the big guys, Google, and then destroyed, right? So now they're only in the background for podcast. If we're going to have the kind of vision I think you're talking about, Tom, like we've all read Ender's Game, I'm sure, right? And the potential of, let's wait this sentence. Good timing, Brandel. I was about to say a sentence that is kind of relevant to you. We're talking about all kinds of issues in the world, social isolation, information, all of the usual stuff. And I was just saying how we write today to share is a bit of a problem. If you write in a blog, because RSS was basically taken over by Google and destroyed, what have we got? We got social media with its issues, and then we have academic writing with where you have to put things in weird templates and stuff. One thing I would really, really like to see our community work on is the nuts and bolts of how to share intelligent pieces of knowledge. And I don't think it's that hard. It's largely to do with how do we treat open metadata. Tim, I can see you're eager.
Yeah, I am for two reasons. One is there's a guy I met just recently who was actually employed by Microsoft to create two-sided tablets that couples could write on to see what that would be like. But the other question that I had is that I'm actually writing about collaboration right now and trying to understand this very question. How do two people or more than two people collaborate on any kind of project? In my case, it's going to be a woodworking project and or a writing project. And I've been going around just talking to everybody I know to try and understand how this process of collaboration works. And the most rewarding and enjoyable of these was when I had one of these guys, actually it was Pule again, sleeping on my couch for a week, visiting from South Africa. And so we would just get up and like walk around the table and talk and look out the window. And that made me wonder whether, thinking about your project that you told us about, whether there is a possibility for two people to actually share vision, whether they would be wearing two pairs of goggles, whether those would be interconnected, whether there would be a way of having like that kind of multiple input that we used to call a forum.
Well, Brandel is here, and he knows all about that.
All right.
It is supported in the headsets. And Brandel, before I give you the word, just wanted to say that on Friday, the people at Apple who are dealing with developers offered to send me a headset so that I can send to my programmers. So that's a really solid piece of Apple support. So just wanted to update everyone, particularly you, Brandel, on that point.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, Brandel, do you want to talk about the kind of avatars in the Vision Pro and how that relates maybe?
Well, so there's a system called SharePlay, which is the basis for sharing applications. There's there's a sort of an intrinsic co-presence that can be managed through FaceTime. But to be honest, I don't have a lot of interest in Vision OS in a native context. I really relate more to the idea of the web and the function of what web content is and what web standards are. So while it is a feature of the platform I tend to work on, I have much more affinity to and proficiency in the context of what it is that the web is. So it is promising, and I think longer term, the only things that will matter for computing are things that matter for the web. It's an extreme position, but it's one that I've had for a long time. I got onto the web and used my first web browser in 1993, so it's grown up with me, and I don't really see much benefit in any other platform other than as a training ground, essentially, for what the web has the ability to achieve.
I'm going to push back on that, as is expected. I like the web. I particularly like the era of the web where we had Go Live. So making a web page was a craft, like using Photoshop, before it became Adobe masses of nonsense. There are no real accessible, create a simple web page thing tools available for non-coders anymore or non-super designers. So that's a problem, but it's not intrinsic. So that's not really my key point. And the other reason I liked that era was you could go full screen. So you didn't have to have all that clutter or Chrome around. To me, that was very important. And yeah, we had iWeb. Exactly, Peter. Thank you.
You can still go full screen. Full screen API has never been better.
How? What do I do?
Document.request full screen.
No, but how do I in Safari now go full screen?
Oh, no, I mean as a web developer. I don't know much about using the web as a user.
I love
No,
you.
so the irony here is that the web has never been easier to develop for. The sort of the notion of semantic markup and the kinds of capabilities that enables are incredible. But for some reason, people have kind of collectively convinced one another that these sort of Byzantine sort of web stacks are necessary. I don't use any of them. People were asking me the other day whether I use Claude or various kind of APIs or libraries, and I was like, I don't even use Git. I just use Notepad. I mean, I use Visual Studio Code because it has code completion, but I don't use any third party libraries. I don't use any external APIs. I just write websites. And I mean, I also designed the foundational frameworks that other future websites will be built on. But it's not necessary. People have convinced themselves of these things, and it's possible to make incredible things in dozens of lines of raw code. So yes, so the API is element.request full screen. That's called the element full screen API. There's also video full screen API, and it would be not implausible to expect those kinds of things to be, if not copied, then at least mirrored within the context of spatial computing into the future.
So there's a very strongly related issue, Brandel, and that is let's talk about citations. So when somebody cites normally now in normal academic things, and the result is either an HTML page or a PDF, the cited source has to go through either manually looking up or some sort of DOI or other link, then you download it. there is no support outside of course visual meta whereby you can cite a paper and then someone else who's reading it who already have that paper can have a direct link to it, which I think is bizarre, right? Because it's literally on the same hard drive. Now, when it comes to the web, one of the key issues I have is that web pages, as far as I understand, for security, cannot easily, even if given access, use what is on the user's private system. So if you have a work environment on the web, to have access to all your PDFs, all your HTMLs, all your notes, all of that, it's not currently feasible, or has that changed, Brandel?
There are a couple of ways you can manage those things. You can drag I think both in Safari and Chrome, you can drag an entire directory structure um, into a place. And I don't know whether you get write access, but you certainly have the ability to reason about the entirety of the contents without being obliged to navigate and manage the entirety of the contents immediately. Um, I would say that is a political issue masquerading as a technical one in terms of what it is that the foundation of trust is for what it is that a device or a system is doing with a person's data, and what are the sort of the nefarious consequences of people being able to do an end run around basic user expectations. So I concede that it's an issue. The web has a solution, which is use the web, put things on the web over web mapped kind of file systems, and people will do things like have local file servers that provide a correspondence between those things, and that is actually a pretty awesome way to manage it, is if you have a place where there's a trusted subset of things to be able to have a website there. But yeah, I concede that it is a challenge to work out how to stitch those two capabilities together.
I'm glad we're on this topic because I am very pro web myself. So when I ask these questions, it's not to poo-poo, it is to understand and to see where we can get. I mean, my first tools were web-based, so I'm very serious about that. But it comes down to ownership a lot, ownership of locations, ownership of data. And one of the things, I can't remember the study. A few years ago, there was this academic page that had a lot of links in it. And all the links said, oh my goodness, I can't believe you clicked on this link. It was a measurement and demonstration that link clicking has a cognitive overhead. It's seen as a real issue. And of course, the original promise of the web was you have instant access to sources so you can verify claims and so on, which it just isn't for several reasons. Now, I do agree, and I do believe, Brandel, that the web has the potential to do that. And that can be an amazing thing. I thought you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So my response to that is I agree that it's a problem. I don't know what kind of problem that is. I don't know whether that's a problem with the technical foundations of the web, or if it's to do with the user affordances of the way the web is presented, because those are both important and very different in terms of the solutions to them. Somewhat related to that is, you've heard of the times and the instances which like high profile, fairly static sort of records, like a large New York Times article, will have a URL in it, and after years and months and decades go by, then the original reference dies, and people are able to buy up the domain like wholesale, not of the New York Times, but of the thing that the New York Times article references. And then they are able to kind of exploit the fact that there's this largely dead kind of reference to it. So these are all. I don't want to minimize that as a problem, but I would sort of still say I don't know what kind of problem that is, and by consequence, I don't know what is the best way to sort of marshal all of the different sort of resources available in order to try to do battle with it.
Sorry, guys, for Brandel and me having a very constructive fight over this. Please, obviously, anyone jump in. It's a very, very important issue. I mean, the American Constitution is a wonderful thing, and it talks about ownership, and it's often seen to be ownership of property. It's also ownership of self and identity. So the notion of ownership is really, really important, right? I'm talking about not because there are many Americans here, but also, obviously, I'm also a Hamilton fan. America is an experiment of putting things together. You know, it's a scaffold in itself, as all governments are. Yours just happens to be a bit newer than some of the other ones. So when we talk about ownership, ownership of data means a lot of things. It means mine, but it also means mine to give away. That's really, really important part of ownership. Otherwise, you're renting. Movies and music now are rented, right? I can't give you the movie I saw last night, even though I paid for it. When it comes to academic or thoughtful texts, that notion becomes really, really important because currently, because of ownership around IP, you cannot link to another, you cannot link inside ACM from outside, for instance. You link to a damn DOI. I think that is absolutely criminal because, first of all, you should have high resolution linking to the section you're referring to if you need to. You should also be able to have your prompt, your AI, your LLM, whatever, go and look at sources based on your personal preferences for how to check it. But because of the realities of business and other things, the web has become very, very siloed, which is, of course, what in the early 90s we hoped it wouldn't be. If we can manage a way around that, that will be absolutely incredible. If we can manage
Well,
to
the
grow,
ACM is only
Hmm?
the ACM is only very recently open access, right? Like, I mean, in terms of the structural change that might facilitate, I think that it is. It's not a done deal that it will be better, but I would say that it's not a foregone conclusion that it will never get better, based on people being able to kind of reckon and tally the costs and benefits of having a more permissive way of hyperlinking and cross-linking between these resources.
well, I know the people who would do this at the ACM, really, really lovely people, but they are hamstrung by organizational issues and other issues. And there is a call there as well to go to an entirely new, different kind of document format. But there is no discussion really, as far as I'm aware, of what that might be. But still, for a library like ACM to host a document, it really does mean it's hosted, like you have to go to the library to read it. Once you have downloaded it, it becomes something else. It's no longer referenceable as the same thing, which is really weird. And part of that comes down to the notion of document names, file names, which can be changed, but then everything can be changed. And over to you, Peter.
Yeah, I find it very troubling, though, in the move to open access, going to the author has to pay to be published model. I find that really obnoxious because you have academics who aren't being paid, but certainly, like anyone in the independent scholar world, does not have a research grant from a big foundation necessarily paying for their work. And then
Here, here.
suddenly they're looking at a model where you're giving your stuff away. You're not being paid for your writing. Now you should be paying for the privilege of writing for free to let other people read your stuff for free. And it's just, hideous. People just, I'll publish it on my blog. I won't publish it through the ACM. I think you're going to have these institutional libraries start to wither if they move to a model where you have to pay to get inside of their walled garden. Why even bother with the walled garden? Let's just move the whole peer review process outside, cut out ACM completely at that point, because its benefit is starting to shrink more and more.
I think you have many
Okay,
strong,
and tirade.
very strong points, Peter. And as an independent publisher myself, Future of Text Volume 1 through many, what you guys contribute to those books have a lot less academic value than if you're in an academic peer-reviewed brand name like ACM. It comes down to, a lot of it comes down to that. Brand name.
Speaking as somebody who has been on the outside of the academic world most of my life, I've certainly seen the level of entrenched distrust in academia for independent scholarship, independent publishing get eroded, especially as, for example, university presses have essentially collapsed, and everybody is sort of scrambling to see what, how things are going to be done next. So at the moment, I have a couple of papers coming out in supposedly peer-reviewed journals, and that phrase doesn't mean the same as it meant 20 years ago. Which I think is, certainly for me, it's a very good thing. The tent is a great deal bigger and the flaps are a lot wider than they used to be.
Yeah, I mean, when I started doing my PhD, I was baffled why people didn't blog. It seemed like the obvious place, but what I learned over time is people said to me that if you blog something and it doesn't hold up, you're ruining your reputation. If you blog something properly, take the time and effort to do it, you might as well submit it to a journal.
Except that many of us, and I suspect you included, were working in areas where there were no journals, or the publication turnaround time was 2 years, or there were individuals who were doing reading for that journal who had their own axes to grind, which were different to yours. I mean, it was always an extraordinarily gated community. And I think that it's been broken down in a way which is overdue, necessary, and satisfying. Plus, for speaking purely for myself, because there is no accepted body of research in what I'm doing, everything goes the other way around. I publish what I publish is essentially a hypothesis, asking people to respond. It's actually a way of getting people to come out of the woodwork with the bits of information they know. So rather than working to be right all the time, it's like attacking with your king in chess. I'm working to be constructively wrong.
As should be the best of academia. So good point.
Yes.
Tom, please.
And I'm sorry, I need to go. I have somebody claiming that I'm not supporting his work in West African minority scripts enough, and he's yelling at me.
Okay. Well, that's part of the whole community here. Come and
Yeah.
go as you can. There's no need to stay to the end. But really good to see you again, Tim.
Wonderful.
And, thank
Nice
you
to
again for
meet you all,
yesterday.
gents, and I hope to see you all again.
All right, take care.
Bye.
I wanted to point out on the blog front, I used to run a new media seminar at my college, and part of the effort there was to try to get professors to blog about what they were learning in the seminar, how that related to what they were doing, et cetera, et cetera. And we read Engelbart, we read Nelson, we had all, a lot of the canon there. But I had one history professor who spent the entire semester. It was like a graduate seminar, basically, lasted for the semester. We met once a week. And he spent the entire semester on one blog. And he was constantly polishing it. He never actually published it because it was never good enough. And of course, that kind of undermines the concept of blogging as an immediate reflection. And that's it's a culture thing more than anything else. But the flip side is what Peter just said. If you have to pay to publish, I think that lowers the legitimacy too, because now you've introduced a perverse incentive for the publisher to publish crap just to earn money. And I get a lot of emails about, hey, let us publish this or that or the other. Send us $150 and we'll publish it. But I'm like, why would I want to? Because I've never heard of your publication. It's pretty clear why you exist. And yeah, sure, I could put it on my CV, but it might impress some people. But it's like a University of Phoenix degree, it's like, it's really comes down to and we're going to have to develop a whole new set of signaling, though, because the other problem you run into, of course, on the flip side of that, is that peer-reviewed journals tend to reject Well, they don't. First of all, they tend to not be very diverse, so they tend to reject women, people of color more often than Anglos. But also they also have their own cultural biases that are built in, and so if you write something that they don't like, they're not going to publish it, even if it's 100% right. And that has nothing to do with the quality of the work. It has everything to do with the culture of the publisher that you're trying to publish with. And it's a dog and pony show. And so yeah, I think it's already happening. I mean, I think there are a lot of open OER journals out there that are legitimate, that are run by people who care, and those numbers are growing. The numbers that are controlled, the journals that are controlled by Elsevier or the other big publishing houses that are dying on the vine. I think they're kind of starting to die on the vine. The nail in the coffin, honestly, will be the death of textbooks. My class, I have open resources in my class. I've uploaded all of them into a notebook LM, and my students can run queries on it, which is far superior than having a book that they're going to sit there that they're not going to read anyway. You know, so that's the end of textbooks then.
So obviously, this is a very, very, very important issue because, like, yeah, Brandel, but just before you entered, I was talking about the ACM paper that I've just submitted today. Some of that has been co-written with AI, with Claude. It didn't write anything, but it helped me with research. But even when I do research for that, the sources have to be real, whatever that means. And the question is, what should it mean? But I'm not going to cite some company website if it's not relevant. I did quote Apple once for some hardware, but you have to cite the right kind of academic sources. So, if we're going to move all of that to the web, and Randall, I think we should definitely aim for that. We have to have a mechanism whereby when we publish in a way where a reader in the future can judge the veracity of our claims, the quality of what we're doing, our standing in the community without being explicit. All of these things matter. If you
Yeah.
quote some.
Oh, go ahead.
No. I was going to repeat it, just mumbling.
No, I mean, I absolutely agree with all of those things, and I think they're almost exclusively social problems of a kind that technology can provide a conduit or a kind of solution to, but they are not technical problems fundamentally. Um, uh, which is not to say they're not real. They're absolutely essential. But it means that anything that sort of tries to claim that those are technical problems is misguided about the capacity for any kind of divergence of political and social motivations to be able to thwart them. So, the peer review is being destroyed by context collapse. The scale and scope of the kinds of peers who might be involved in something and the various axes they have to grind, or the lack of expectation that there's going to be positive reciprocity within those systems. And that's not to do with the kinds of intermediating technologies, but to do with the sheer scale upon which peer review is kind of operating at this point. And the same kind of gating mechanisms that make Elsevier expensive and sort of manipulative are the same kinds of things that give rise to the reputational kind of things that Peter mentioned there. Like, I have no doubt, based on my I'm not an academic. I haven't done any academic stuff, and so I only very sort of second or third hand tend to receive it. But from all of the people I've ever heard from about Elsevier, they are sort of fairly malign actors within the system in terms of how much rent they effectively try to squeeze out of it. But that transition from providing a necessary kind of gating, mediating capacity to becoming a sort of a craven rent seeker is actually a lot more fluid than one might assume. So, yeah, I agree that I think that the web is a good place to solve those things, but I think that the web itself is not the solution to them, and I don't know where to look for the sort of the best framing of the problems to be able to get to the solutions.
Good point. Tom, please.
I just I have one quick point there. I do think it's a technology problem, but the problem is not the new technology; it's the old technology, and the fact that all those structures are based on a narrowcast or a broadcast model where small groups control the access to the publication world. And we've been moving out of that paradigm for 20 years, but of course the rest of it hasn't caught up yet. This is what I was talking about in my talk in November as well.
So we go through this every once in a while in the community, and I think it's very important to do that. Look at the social, the economic, the technical, and all these aspects of this. But so I really think that one of the key things is to be able to save an item of knowledge. You need to be able to own it, put it on a hard drive, thumbstick, whatever it is. Any library, any publisher disappears, end of the earth, doesn't matter, you have the thing. That is really, really important. I know that you can take an HTML page and save it as a package. As we've talked about recently, Brandel pointed out that with CSS, you can actually bundle the CSS. There are several things you can do, but are we back to having a discussion maybe around the future of ePub? I mean, but considering ePub seems to have gone into different versions, let's pretend we have the power to do real change here. Could ePub be updated and modified to do the best of the web and the best of a PDF? I mean, from author, which is of course my world, I can export as an ePub. I think, I can't remember if we removed that actually because it was so messy. Let me see. Can export as PDF, Word, RTF, WordPress, HTML, LaTeX, Markdown, XRMap, and XRBook. If we design our own, okay, Brandon, let me ask you this. Can an ePub be read in Safari? Most of the internals is HTML and XML and all that good stuff, right?
Yeah, I know Apple Books is a WebKit view. I don't know. I don't know what the sort of the line of delineation and responsibility. So it's fundamentally the thing that is Safari is doing the reading. So to the extent that it can or can't do it, I don't know. I don't deal with EPUBs much, so I haven't tried. I did try to author one, and I was frustrated by how weird the additional pieces of it were. So I think that there's a piece there in the authoring that I don't fully grasp why somebody has made it so difficult. Have you ever heard of Origin Private File System?
No, but when I listen to this recording, I will have.
Okay, cool. Um,
Tell us, please.
it is a
Peter was nodding.
it's a thing that people have used for the sort of I/O of large numbers of sort of disk-like reads and writes for the purposes in the context of my USD discussions, making sure that they can kind of read and write to multiple layers of these universal C description files. So it sounds interesting. I've again not come across it because most of my experience of the web is relatively like related to doing pretty light informational kind of textual stuff or yeah.
So in the closing 19 minutes of this discussion, what are the key things we, just us right here, right now, want to have a medium for framing thoughts? What I mean is, here is a thing that I can cite, or here's a thing a student has handed in, or here is a report, meaning no endless Google Doc type thing, no Word document that can be easily changed. And it has to be ownable, interactable, shareable. Are there any other aspects of that I'm missing? I think they're obvious for our group. Also some level of authenticity. So it's not necessarily authored by someone who says it isn't. If we could just if we had the power, how would we want this to be enclosed? Most certainly very unlikely in a PDF, right? I mean, Tom, you are an active teacher, active duty teacher. How would you want to receive student work for examination, and how would you want to deal with the citations in student work? And finally, when spatial and models happen, how would you want that to be enclosed and then?
Well, I mean, one of the big things that I'm emphasizing right now is sort of I know you did this rather than an AI kind of tool, is requiring them to back check all the sources. And the way that they demonstrate that is since it's almost all online, they demonstrate that by dropping a link into the assignment that shows, hey, I went and looked at this data bank and can verify that these numbers are correct, that that a secondary source or the AI is giving me. That's part of the methodology for information literacy, which is I start every semester with information literacy now, and really emphasize. I use the SIFT method, which uh, uh, Mike Caulfield developed. There are others as well, but I like the SIFT method because the T in that, the last part, it's stop and then investigate the source. And if you find out the source is crap, then you can pretty much stop there. Then find other sources that are telling you the same thing. And then the last part is trace information back to the original. And that, in my mind, is the most critical part of the process, especially once you start creating things, is because you got to make sure that the data you're getting is not obfuscated by an AI or by another human, and that you are making a point based on clean data. And so the answer to my question, the simple answer is something that I can backtrack on, a link, a hyperlink, I don't know, something like that, where I can actually see. But also the other thing might be you figure out a way to put that into the environment so that when somebody quotes something, it automatically goes out and finds the original data and gives you a window that shows this is where it was collected. And and that also you have to evaluate who's collecting it, who's leaving what out. One of my favorite books from the 1950s. It's called How to Lie with Statistics, and it's a brilliant book. You can get it on the archive, actually, the Internet Archive, if you look for it. It's really short too, and the numbers are a little out of date, but the points are the same. You can manipulate numbers to say what you want if you're clever about it. So this
Yeah.
is where the humans are going to come into play, and where the human premium matters is our ability to put eyeballs on things and be critical of what those look like.
So I arrogantly searched for my own name on ACM because I know there was a recent thing. There was an interview. Klaus interviewed me for ACM SigWeb. And with all due respect to ACM, this is how pathetic the article is. Forget the contents, right? First of all, there is no outline because, well, there isn't one. It says this is a PDF slash e-reader. What does that mean? The slash, right? It's really, really bad. And if I download it, I get a PDF. Peter Wasilko, can you think of a ePub thing that is an ACM that's proper ePub? They don't really seem to
Real
do
quick,
that.
you know why ACM does that? They're selling legitimacy, not the publication.
Yeah, no, exactly.
They expect no one to read it.
No,
I've never
exactly.
used any of the EPUBs. I just download a PDF all the time. Uh, EPUB
But
is just a format never bothered with.
But obviously, Peter, you're one of the few people who really understand visual meta, and you've been very helpful in making it a real thing. Of course, you can't cheat by just putting all the metadata in an appendix at the back of the PDF, as we do with visual meta. And it's really nice that the AI can really parse that easily. It's very clean, but it's a big kludge. It's literally a band-aid. So for the sake of argument, in our last 13 minutes, if we decided as a community to jump entirely into ePub, what benefits might we get? Or do we even want to define what we mean by ePub to each other? Should we just define it roughly as HTML with XML, maybe even CSS wrapped in a package?
I think if we're going to go that far, we might as well just create an entirely new format from scratch so that we're not tied up with any of the legacy decisions.
I would love it, Peter, if you could write a piece for the next book on that, so that we would have something to agree and disagree, so it doesn't become just a general discussion. But
That sounds like a good topic for my next contribution. Just maybe one big piece focused on that instead of a whole slew of pieces like I had last time around.
that would be really, really good. But I have to. Okay, so let me ask you then, because this is where it kind of went today. If we could snap our fingers and design a new document, and let's say that Google, Apple, Microsoft, and everybody decided to support us because they love us, because we're nice people, what would the attributes of such a thing be? And would those attributes have a huge delta from what ePub could be? Is it maybe not a shoulder of giants to stand on? Or should it be straight HTML? Or does anyone have strong thoughts on that?
I think it should be standoff markup.
But that kills one of the main points, is you're supposed to own it. It has to be one thing. Do you mean standoff markup inside one package, or do you mean completely separate?
I mean that the text component should be a raw text component, and the markup component should be a separate component as opposed to interweaving tags.
Yeah,
so it could be inside of one package. So it could be one file, one package, and the standoff markup would be an embedded standoff markup document hidden inside of the package and accessible programmatically. But as far as the user is concerned, they'd just be looking at one file.
That sounds
Only
like
inside
ePub.
the file,
But
it would use the standoff markup approach.
So that is ePub, right? Or at least supportable through the ePub approach.
I'm not sure. I haven't read through the ePub specs, so I have no idea how it's working under the hood. Like I said, it's a format I've just never dealt with.
I did have one very frustrating meeting with the ACM Digital Library Board a few years ago, where they really didn't like the idea of visual meta because reasons that I agree with. It's just an add-on on something that's not good. But they said they wanted a new format, and I, as sweetly, as politely as I could, I asked, what kind of format are you thinking about? And they said, we have no idea. So, we because of our passion and our interest, and I mean, look at all of us, we're spending time here on this. That means we have power to do something. So if we decide on an approach, we could really start to move something, but not if it's just general. RSS with Dave Weiner is very interesting, and it's a shame how at the state of it is now, for sure.
Well,
Anyway,
this is how we got Mozilla to kind of.
Yeah, Peter, please continue.
Excuse me, how we got Mozilla to adopt it.
Please tell us.
I'll dig out some links. I was reading his story about how he did that.
Peter, did you know that the end of your name is iOS? How cool is that? Literally iOS. That's fantastic. And Brandel, you're in the wrong country. You should be in the UK, according to your last name. Sorry, I just saw that iOS there. Right. Dimitri iOS, yes. I mean, the thing is, all the work that I'm doing is it's one thing. It's trying to be proof of concept. And I finally now, through the support of all of you who are, and I have credited the lab in what I'm writing, and of course, been doing introduction to Tim Cook, which then went, down the line at Apple. They're absolutely now trying to help because unsurprisingly, no, not unsurprisingly, surprisingly few people are working in the headset. So the fact that we're having dialogue and doing it does actually mean something. So if we have an approach where we're passionate about our knowledge should be in this form for this reason. That doesn't have to be just talk. So if you guys have thoughts for next time or in the future, let's do that. Yeah, Peter Demetrius, be careful with your last name there. Any final thoughts today then, guys? I'm going to give you a link here, 1 second. On this page, there is the song of yesterday, which was kind of surprising in the chorus. It really caught it. The Tim Brooks community writ large has got some really, really interesting people. I have invited them here, so at some point I do expect some of them to join us. Yeah, we should probably look into ePubs, you know, or any kind of a wrapper, really, right?
Yeah.
Does anybody
I
know
mean,
the Sorry, Brandel, go ahead.
they have some pretty frustrating limitations with regard to functionality, JavaScript and things like that. You know, as first and foremost, a JavaScript. I mean, I'm a web developer, but I have for most of my life been a JavaScript developer, just because you get to do fancier, sillier things with it. But yeah, it's XHTML with CSS, and I'm not sure what are the caveats applied to what the CSS does, but I certainly know that there's there's very much less, if not no, JavaScript that can apply to an ePub document. But
if you could
Yeah,
imagine,
there's pluses and minuses to that, with how dynamic you can have the content do nasty things. You know, put a sandbox in to run JavaScript. Definitely, ePub, I don't think has satisfied, you know, the replacement for PDF. Unfortunately, PDF seems to be the document format.
I mean, one of the most
But
important
ePub
aspects.
is
One of the most important aspects of PDF is, of course, the opposite of what we want, which is its locked downness. You know, thus was said. And but there's no real reason why you can't have a PDF in an ePub, right? So you have one view, and then you have the flexibility of a richer view. So yeah, something to go in circles around every once in a while. It would be nice, though. It is. We've now passed the first quarter of the 21st century. The fact that we're still having these discussions is fascinating, but it also means that there's an opportunity to change it, right?
I always figured by now we'd have moon bases and space colonies all over the place.
You all do. You
where's
have all
my flying car?
Yes, where's my flying car?
you've all been following For All Mankind, right?
I fell off. I haven't
When
had
did
the
you
heart
fall
to
off?
watch the interplanetary catastrophe that it tends to ensue, given the global one that's sort of impending at any given moment. I think Heather's sort of jumped ahead a little bit, so I have some catching up to do. But I have. It just didn't feel like the right moment to come up with a made up life ending kind of a crisis.
You know, Brandel, I've had several of those with For All Mankind. You feel it's kind of done, and they're kind of pushing in or whatever. Yeah, I agree. Sometimes that does need to be pushed past.
No, it's not even that it's passé. It's just that I have enough anxiety for the real things hanging over the sort of the world state of affairs that I don't want to sort of get invested in a made up one at the same time. Just want to.
That's another reason to recommend The Holdovers that we saw last night. It's such a beautiful film, and so beautifully made, and so simple. New England in the winter, yet worth watching.
Yeah, my relaxing read right now is is Dan Jones's book on the Crusades. It's just not, but it's like, well, it could be worse. I mean, there was a a point of phrase in there where, or a paragraph where he said, such and such account did a pilgrimage to the east to atone for his discovering his wife's lover, beating him to death with a lance and dumping him headfirst into a lavatory. So, you know, so, it could be worse.
It could be worse, absolutely.
Oh, I just dropped my favorite musical video link. I want my flying car in the chat.
I will cue that up for later. Oops. Yeah, it's playing. Yeah, thanks for that.
Oh, it's a great song.
Look forward to listening to it. Yeah, obviously you've all seen The Martian as well, right? Oh, we saw that on the way back from China. Edgar saw the whole thing. I was so proud of him, sitting there just staring into the screen. It is basically just some guy surviving, but it's Ridley Scott, and it's just incredibly well told. I think, Brandel, you would like it. It's a very reality-based thing that's very, very well done. But yes, we should have flying cars and we should be transporting ourselves to different planets at this point. But hey, we can't even figure out document format, so there are some limitations to human imagination at the moment, for sure. Should I put up a topic to talk about this kind of document thing in the near future, or do you feel that we've kind of done as much as we should today? Is it a thing for us?
I think it might be an interesting exploration to, I mean, Brandel answered my question from earlier about what are the guts of the ePub look like. But, sometimes, you got to remember some of these formats were developed because they were convenient at the time, like Flash, for instance. It met the requirements of the time, bandwidth, and all the other things that went with that, but it outlived its usefulness. And so one question is, has that format, EPUB or Mobi or whatever, the Amazon format is currently, have they outlived their usefulness because they're very limited in terms of how they function, and they have a different purpose than they have a purpose of reading books rather than finding information, and those are two not necessarily the same. They're not necessarily the same thing. But I would be interested to see what kind of attempts have been made to break out of HTML or other kinds of formats that have changed how we look at things. And I was looking for it real quick. I couldn't find it. I heard a thing recently about a group doing an AI document format and developing one. I think there's Israeli, if I'm not mistaken. I'm like, at first I thought, well, it's kind of wacky, but maybe that's it. I mean, the problem with Kindle is, or with a lot of these formats, is they're very self-contained. And so what I'm doing with AI when I upload them into Notebook LM is I want to break them out. I want to break out the information in them so I can look at it in different ways and examine the book quickly and efficiently as well. And so Kindle works against me on that. I have to convert all that stuff into PDFs or something like that to be able to do that. I think it's probably illegal too, but they're skirting the edge of copyright there. But that's the world I think that's coming. As I say, my students' textbook is a Notebook LM library with open source in it.
Problem with that is when you publish something, it has to be citable.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we have to have an endpoint to be able to continue to the next.
Sure.
So that's why I'm a bit worried. But then, anyway, we're over time. Thank you, guys.
You can cite You can cite an idea. You don't have to cite the whole document. We have to change citations too. But yeah. Anyway,
that becomes a different kind of citation, which is absolutely valid and a really interesting thing.
Something to think about.
Yes. Thank you, guys, and see you soon. And hopefully, I'll have a bigger demo next week with so on and so on. Okay. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.